Today I'm in Philadelphia.
Philadelphia!
At the Humane League Captain Summit, I'm exploring the idea of abolitionism versus welfarism in the vegan movement, so we'll be tackling all the hard-hitting questions. If someone were beating a child, we wouldn't ask them to hit the child a little less hard. So why are we asking for these animals to be raised in better conditions? The Humane League mostly focuses on improving chicken welfare, but they do plenty of other work I'll talk more about at the end of this video. Correct me if I'm wrong, I feel like you used to fall pretty hard on the abolitionist side and kind of moved more toward welfarism. Is that correct?
Yeah, for the most part, like my early years of activism revolved around, especially specifically getting individuals to change their dietary behaviors in a very abrupt and immediate manner. Like that was always the objective. And so, kind of early on in my veganism and my activism career, I was very more abolitionist leaning.
I would identify as a total abolitionist. I believe in abolition. I think that the way that we view animals has repercussions on every marginalized group. I'm very much like in with the vegan ethos, but I take inspiration from movements. I mean, I don't agree with this movement, but the pro-life movement, where they are welfarists through and through. They are baby steppers.
Oh, not that kind of baby step?
I think like the pro-lifers are like the vegan's evil stepsister. Like I see them with their like bloody signs like outside abortion clinics. I'm like, do I know you? Like we met at a different protest. But I think that they do amazing legislative stuff. So I think our like cage-free stuff is the same thing. Like we have to gum up the infrastructure in a way that makes it more expensive to do this to animals. And I think what we saw with Prop 12, the gestation crate ban in California, is exactly the sort of stuff we want to see.
Do you think that like if you promote the idea of welfarism, like cage-free stuff, does that encourage the idea that it's okay to use animals as resources?
There's going to be some folks who may say that's the case.
Yes, it does. It does.
I do not think that that's true. I think that, when you're talking about cages, whether cage-free, out-of-cage, free range, you're talking about the living conditions for these tens of billions of animals and the horrific conditions. So it's putting a spotlight on the issue in and of itself.
My family's never going to go vegan. They're never going to get it. And I'm sure we all have people in our lives that we know they're never going to get it. But you know what? My mom might vote for a slaughterhouse ban in her town. She doesn't want to live next to a slaughterhouse. I don't care why people are on board. If we're making things more expensive, if less animals are being harmed, which is not what is happening right now with our current tactics, I think that that's what we should be doing.
Most of the time when I'm talking to people on the street, they'll bring up kind of the idea of like a small local farm or like a happy farm or something like that to justify eating animals. Do you think that that is because of welfare, like this kind of free range push, or do you think that they would just say that regardless?
I think they would say that regardless. I think a lot of it is misinformation. It's a lot of marketing. They will spend millions and millions of dollars just for marketing, just to push that old MacDonald had a farm type of look.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. And on that farm he had a cow, E-I-E-I-O.
And he stole her calf and he milked her dry and he sent her to a slaughterhouse.
Old MacDonald had a farm, E-I-E-I-O.
When we all know in reality that's not what's true.
No, I think propaganda is to blame for that. I also just think people are so dissonant about it and they don't really care. And they're just trying to say like whatever. They just like heard someone else say that and they're like, I don't know what to say in this part of the conversation, so I'm going to say it. Because my parents say that to me. Not to bring up my parents again, but they said to me all the time, they're like, they own a deli and they're like, we get our meat from like XYZ farm and it's amazing. It's like, you get your food from like Costco. What do you mean? What are you talking about? Like,
Costco has a farm behind it. You didn't know that? Old McCostco had a farm, E-I-E-I-O. Do you think it is possible to be an abolitionist who supports welfare reform?
Yes. I think it's really honest. You want to know what you're striving for. You want to know what's the goal. And so I think the combination of it is quite strategic. So Welfarism, I believe at its core is all about strategy and using effective tactics so that we can get to that end.
I hope that I am that. I think that I'm that because, we've talked, obviously, personally, like, I think you know that I'm doing other things that are not welfare. Like, I'm totally in with the goons of this movement. Like, I like them, I'm friends with them. I think that the more aggressive activism is exciting, and I personally enjoy it, and I think that it does get results. But in my day job, I promote welfare, and all I'm trying to do is gum up the system. Like, that's my main goal, is to cause these companies financial damage.
I really do believe that, the work that we're doing is causing economic disruption to, in this case, the egg laying industry, or it could be the chickens raised for meat industry, or whatever industry it is. But it is causing economic disruption. It's raising the cost of doing business. It's really our duty to constantly be disrupting this industry to hold it at bay. These small wins may not be what I want at the end, but they are still victories. They are still meaningful, and they're going to make an impact and get me to where I want to eventually be.
When we change the environment and make it harder to eat meat, I do think people will stop.
Yeah.
Like, I think that I care way more about changing the environment than changing any person, because I think the environment can change first, and then people will adapt to that environment.
There's this really good book I like called Atomic Habits about habit change, and how, there are a lot of ways to change your habits, but one of the most effective ways is to just change your environment. So you make it harder to do the things that you're trying to stop. So, if you're spending too much time on your computer, just make your computer in a more inconvenient place, and say you have to plug it in to use it, and you'll use it way less and leave books out. So I use that all the time. I wasn't stretching as much as I wanted to be, so now my yoga mat is easily accessible. And that's one of the reasons that I really did kind of go vegan, was because I shop at Trader Joe's, and they've got vegan substitutes for pretty much everything. So I just kind of realized this is actually really easy. I just kind of have to move my hand over. Do you think these welfare wins, are they more likely to create a culture of momentum and winning, or will they create a culture of complacency?
Well, we've been able to see that it does create momentum. 6-7 years ago, the percentage of hens who were out of cages was single digits. And so we began campaigning for companies to ban cages from their supply chain. It did have this momentum effect, and we were able to get inevitably hundreds and hundreds of companies, over 400 in several years, to ban cages from their supply chain. And so we're now seeing those commitments come to fruition, and we're also seeing that the number of cages in the United States is actually decreasing. And so now we're over 30% of hens in the United States are out of cages. So, and that number is going to continue to increase as the years go on.
My dream is that the people that work on these things feel ownership over these campaigns, and they feel like they have played a part in it, and if that is what's happening, I think that builds momentum, because people are I banned gestation, I canvassed for this, I did whatever, I did petitions, whatever they did. I actually don't know the group that got that passed. But I really want people to be autonomous, decentralized activists. And I think at that point, we saw with the fur disruptions, they're going on all over the country. Yeah. And I've been all over the country doing these. Everybody there is I got sacks to drop fur. Yeah. So
I made one phone call, I was it was me.
It was me, yeah. It was actually me. So I think that it builds momentum with our communities to get any sort of win.
One of the analogies I hear thrown around a lot is people say, oh, we shouldn't be, demanding better conditions for animals, because if there were a child being abused, you wouldn't say oh, don't hit that child as hard. What do you think about that analogy?
I think it's putting your passion in the wrong place. I think that obviously, we don't want there to be any abuse of animals right now, but in order for that to be a reality, it could take a long time.
I actually like to compare animals to humans, and I do it a lot, but I think that this issue is different from every other issue, because every single person is participating, and every single person is participating in a way that gives them a positive experience. I think even when you look back, because I hear animals compared to slaves all the time, which I don't personally do, but like not many people were actively engaging in slavery. I think this issue is different because people really have to have an internal shift. So I just don't know that it's helpful to be like, oh, beat your child or beat your wife only once a week or something. I don't think that analogy holds up because people don't understand it and nobody's even close to that, you know?
Yeah, I think it's kind of an unfair analogy because we don't live in a world where people are beating children all the time. If we did, then maybe I would be fighting for them to beat their children less. I don't know.
Hey, could you hit that baby a little less hard?
Fuck off! One thing about slavery you brought up is that people were benefiting from slave-made goods, and there was actually a movement to get people to stop consuming slave-made goods, and there was like a guy who had a conference about it, and it didn't work. So the abolitionists completely shifted tactics.
To see that, I would love to see that information.
So now I kind of want to talk about, well, you're kind of like an expert in building community and that kind of thing. So I want to talk to vegans who maybe don't have community around them and would like to kind of get into that. Like, what are some of your tips for building like a network of activists or just getting more active in their own communities?
Ask yourself some questions first, like what's around you? So is there already an established nonprofit organization doing work in your community? Can you connect with them? If the answer is yes, then beautiful. You've got those next steps figured out. Reach out to them, ask them like, what do you need? How can I get involved?
Go on that horrible Facebook page, Vegan Mississippi, whatever. That page, they hate activists on there. They're going to hate you. But the activists know. They look at the page. So say, hey, where are the activists at? You don't have to say anything else. They'll answer that. I've actually had good luck with joining like Food Not Bombs or other like vegan feeding places, and those people tend to be activists. Do not go to a potluck. If you haven't done any activism, you're not allowed to go to a potluck. And if you're putting on potlucks, you need to do 5 activism events for every potluck. Because I've actually seen so many communities, because I move around, disintegrate into potluck communities where they were doing activism and then now they do like a weekly potluck and they put all their energy into that, and it's like such a bummer.
So potlucks aren't saving animals?
Potlucks are not saving animals.
Let's say you don't have any, you're not aware of any network in your community. The first thing I would recommend is come up with a plan, come up with an agenda. What do you want to work on? What does your community need that's not being satisfied? Once you have that kind of goal in mind, the next thing you do is you need people power. You need to go meet people or look at your friends, family, who's in your network right now, your coworkers, and how can you talk to them about this and get them involved.
Anything you want to say about abolitionism or welfarism or like vegans who don't really like pushing for welfare? Like, what would you say to them?
I would say do whatever activism you want to do. If you're only going to go out for an abolitionist thing and you want to connect with those people, do it. I want you to do what you're going to do. And some people are only going to go leaflet. And like, I don't see a ton of value in that, but if you're gonna do it, I want you to do it. Get into your community. Do not go to a potluck. No potlucks. You can do one potluck on Thanksgiving with your vegan friends. Yeah. But I would just really want people to know that activism, nobody that's doing activism is smarter than you or has more skills than you. We're all just morons out here and we're doing it. Like, anything you can do to get out there and do something.
If you enjoyed this and want to get involved with the Humane League, click the link in the description. They do everything from legislative work to vegan outreach and can help you build your own activist community. I've been volunteering with them for the last year and it's been an amazing way to connect with other activists, put pressure on corporations, and build leadership skills. Special thanks to my morally superior patrons, Amy, Andy, Deepak, and Rebecca.